Welcome to UO Today. I'm Leah Middlebrook, the director of the Oregon Humanities Center, and my guest today is Karl Scholz, the president of the University of Oregon. Prior to joining the UO in 2023, Scholz was the provost at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where he also served as the dean of the College of Letters and Science from 2013 to 2019. Thanks for coming back on the show. Nice to see you.
It's a treat to be here, Leah. Thank you for inviting me.
One of the reasons we wanted to bring you back is to get a bit of an update now. You've been here for a while. What are some highlights that you'd like to share from the last academic year?
It seems like almost every day, certainly every week, I learn something about the University of Oregon. Just say, that is really, really cool. And so people have been incredibly kind in welcoming myself and my family to Eugene. I am inspired by the amazing place that the University of Oregon is. I look around in these beautiful green trees and the Willamette River and just the environment that we're in, and then to see the remarkable things happening at the University of Oregon. So a favorite phrase of mine has become the upside of the university is breathtaking. And so to have this opportunity to pursue that upside with the great colleagues that I have across the university is really exciting.
That's terrific, even when it is somewhat shrouded in fog, as it is today.
It is.
Over the fog is sunshine.
Yeah, and I like to say you don't have to shovel rain, and so the climate is just fine.
Good point. What is the profile of this year's incoming class?
We have a great class. We have the most Oregonians we have ever had. And so I love that because it shows this commitment we have to the great state of Oregon. And that's particularly impressive, I think, in that the number of students graduating from Oregon high schools is falling. And so that means we're taking an ever increasing share of the high school graduates are coming to the University of Oregon. So I love that commitment to the state. The other aspect is it's our most diverse class in history. And so I believe it's 19.6% of our incoming first-year students are Latino, Latina, Hispanic, or Latinx, your term of choice. And that's particularly striking because last year I believe that statistic was 15.8%. So we went from 15.8% to 19.6%. And that, again, helps build this very diverse, very talented class, first-year class. So I'm very, very excited.
So as we say in Spanish, fenomenal. UO is implementing its new strategic plan, Oregon Rising. Tell us a little bit about the shared principles in this plan.
Yeah, so strategic planning can be a fraught exercise in that it can take a lot of time and energy of people, and it's not uncommon for strategic plans to get completed and put on bound nicely, written up nicely, and sit on a shelf and just collect dust. And I was most anxious for that not to happen at the University of Oregon. So we had a quite inclusive process to try to think about, all right, what are our priorities in the strategic plan? And I love where we came out because they reflect the most important things for our university. Who are our stakeholders? Well, it's our students and their families. Who are our stakeholders? It's the great state of Oregon. Who are our stakeholders? It's our wonderful people. And who are our stakeholders? It's a great university. We want to expand the boundaries of knowledge and enhance understanding of what it means to be human. And so thinking about those things then out of that came our priorities of the strategic plan. But then you asked, okay, in getting this done, how do we make progress on these things that are so important? And it was important, I think, to reflect on our principles. And so we came up with, prioritize our work toward our common goals. If these are the things that really matter, then let's focus on the things that really matter and not get distracted by all these other things that might be happening. A favorite phrase or cliche of mine, if you have 16 priorities or 8 priorities, you have none at all. So let's really focus on what matters. Let's try to break down silos and align our efforts. One of the things, a critique I'll have of higher education is that we operate too often in our silos, whether the disciplinary boundaries or, no, that's, my job is this, I'm not going to think about that. And one of the things I love about the Oregon Humanities Center is that you break down silos. This is where it's happening. So let's break down those silos. Let's hold ourselves accountable. If we have our goals, let's measure. Let's try to understand. And if we're coming up short, let's figure out how to do better. Let's acknowledge both our people and our financial resources. So let's be realistic in what we can do, and let's use our resources as best we can. Let's always keep equity in mind. Let's take an equity-minded approach to how we're going about doing what we're doing. Let's be informed by data. So let's try to understand what progress we're making. And then lastly, let's celebrate and share our successes, because there will be successes, and let's honor the many, many people who make that possible.
That's terrific. As sort of an overview, I'm interested in the 4 main goals. So you mentioned the goals in passing, but I don't think we have the 4 laid out in front of us. So
thank you for the question, Leah. So I talked about our stakeholders. So I talked about our students and their families. And so goal number 1 is to remove impediments to timely graduation. Stakeholder group number 2 is the great state of Oregon. And so let's be a leader in helping our students make the transition from school to the world of work or to graduate school or what is next. And so I'll often talk about that as let's be a leader in career preparation. Clearly, one of the things that makes Oregon so wonderful and so distinctive is our great people. And so in thinking about how do we support our people, I love the word flourishing. And so how do we create a flourishing campus? And then we're a great public research university. And one of the missions of the great public research universities is to expand the boundaries of knowledge, and that phrase that I used before, enhancing understanding of what it means to be human. And so how do we leverage these areas that I like to think of as being distinctively Oregon to amplify? And so I think about environment and environmental resilience, right? We're in such a beautiful, beautiful location. I think about child, behavioral, adolescent, and mental health. We're outstanding in that area through the great college education and the Ballmer Institute. We're the birthplace of Nike, so human performance in sport that can be something that we're known for already, and then accelerating scientific impact. And I want to hasten to add that I'm an economics faculty member. It's a wonderful department, and we're constantly trying to be the best we can be. So to identify those 4 distinctively Oregon areas, it's not to say other areas aren't crucial, but it's how do we elevate the research prowess of the university.
Yeah, thank you for putting it that way. I think that one of the reasons I was looking forward to talking with you today is something sort of implicit in what you're saying, is that you chose this term flourishing, right? You chose the word flourishing, and that's such an evocative word, and just now you were talking about elevating, right? So I think what I sense in the Oregon Rising, and I guess rising is also a good term for this, is this idea of inspiring growth, right? But I was interested in just hearing a little bit more about what a flourishing university environment looks like to you. How will we see that? How do we participate in that? How might that be measured?
Yeah, no, I love the question. It's a complicated one, right? I can promise we'll have conversations in the next few years, and we'll never say, okay, we've reached it. We are now flourishing, right? Exactly. Exactly. We done flourished. And so it's a process. And so, and other people may have their own definitions of flourishing, but I think mine, for the purposes of our conversation, is a set of elements that I think it's very hard for human beings to flourish if there aren't these continuing opportunities for growth and for change. I think it's very hard for people to flourish if they aren't healthy or if they aren't well. So wellness is an important component of flourishing. I think it's very hard for people to flourish if there's not community. And again, another shout out to the Oregon Humanities Center to create that community. Very few of us are such misanthropes that we don't, we like being around people. We can take energy from people. Resilience is a big part of flourishing, right? Because it's not always rainbows and fairies. And so as we get knocked off, how do we respond to those inevitable side steps in life? And then I think having some sort of sense of purpose, that we're here for a reason, whether to be the best friend I can be, or to be the best parent I can be, the best scholar, or the best administrator, to have some sort of sense of purpose. So I think these are clear components of flourishing. But I think as part of that community, the ability to have courageous conversations, the ability to be empathetic with one another, the understanding, perspectives different than one's own, are all part of this idea of trying to be a flourishing community. So whether we're supporting people's growth, whether they're supporting people's wellness, whether it's supporting people's aspirations, is part of the campus culture that I hope we can embrace.
Mm-hmm. Yes, well, yeah, we have such a good tradition of that at the University of Oregon. I think of how strong our mentoring programs are, and
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, thank you for that. And I saw on the university website that you were also, in presenting the Oregon Rising Plan, you were working with your team to think about metrics for how do we figure out the percentage of flourishing students and flourishing graduates. Has that project begun yet, or is that still?
It is early stages. So there has been some work on measuring aspects of this, and so we're trying to learn from others. Some of it will be qualitative in nature. It's probably the hardest of the goals that I've outlined to quantify, but my economist friends might be disapproving of this, but quantification isn't the be-all and end-all. It's trying to understand what we're doing, making opportunities available for people to dig in and make progress.
That just sounds great. Thank you so much for that. On the easier matters, how is the university creating pathways to timely graduation, and why is timely graduation important?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I like this phrase of removing impediments to timely graduation, because if one takes that seriously, you have to think about everything that affects the student experience and why it may go awry. So you have to think about advising, and do we have, are we supporting our advisors sufficiently, and do we have enough advisors to provide timely, accurate, empathetic advising? We have to think about financial exigencies. So certainly one of the reasons that people will leave school is that there's some mishap or financial barrier that forces them to take another job or leave school altogether. And so how can we support our students' financial futures? Another is curriculum complexity. So I'll joke around sometimes that I loved being an economics professor. I still like being an economics professor, but I particularly love being an economics professor at 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Right? That's a neat teaching schedule that you can work with your graduate students, you can do your research. But if everyone teaches their courses at that time, that's not so great. Or if there's a key course that someone needs to take in order to advance in a minor or a major, and it's only offered once a year, that can be problematic for a student who gets off cycle. So thinking through this curriculum complexity. And I think it's so important because, I'll be blunt, college is expensive. And so to try to keep expenses down, we want students to make it through in the time frame that they hope to do so. And so this isn't like, oh, everybody has to graduate in 4 years, though I'm excited. I want everyone to be able to graduate in the timeline that they wish to. And so to try to remove the impediments that are inhibiting that can allow students to be successful. Mm-hmm. And just to repeat myself, it forces us to think about, all right, what are those things that are breaking down that aren't serving students right? And that's I'd argue, a very, very healthy thing for a university to do.
Yes, that capacity to reflect and to take a second look at things. Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
Another goal you mentioned was career preparation, and you seem very passionate on the topic. I wonder, do you want to say a little bit more?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'd love to. And so when I first started in this work and thinking about careers, I was worried, and particularly my humanist colleagues would say, oh my gosh, here's this economist dean wanting to commodify this precious thing that we're doing. And it was like, no, that's not it at all. I mean, I'm saying for the right student, philosophy or history can be a profoundly wonderful major. And so I'll be the first to admit there's not very many job wanted ads. It's, say, historian preferred, but history can be a fantastic discipline to study, that you're going to learn to write beautifully, you're going to learn to communicate beautifully, you're going to learn to examine broad swaths of data and create meaning out of it, and you're going to learn to analyze change, right? I'm sure my historian colleagues would be very offended by this, but one of the things that history is about is the study of change, and every organization that we encounter has to navigate change. So who better than a great history major? And so, but
I don't think any history majors would object, by the way, to that characterization.
The subject of history, they might think, that's a little different than that, President, but they might indulge me, give me a hall pass. And so in thinking about careers, it's not that I want to, again, commodify this precious thing we're doing, but I want us to think more about what are these transferable skills that students are learning through their courses of study, and help students better articulate how those skills are going to be able to create value for whatever organization they go to after college, to help make those transitions easier. It's important to do because the cost of college is increasing. Many years ago, I'm meeting alums that said, yeah, I paid for my college with a good summer job. You can't do that anymore. And so as the costs go up, there's more, I think, that gets loaded onto us to create value. This is one of the ways that we can create value. And equally importantly, one of the great strengths of the University of Oregon is this amazing alumni network. Very successful, very talented, very passionate about the university. And through this career idea, we find opportunities for alumni to give back. They can give back through mentoring. They can give back through helping to provide internships, providing informational interviews. There's all sorts of things that our alums can do that then we can capitalize on what I would argue is one of the great strengths of the University of Oregon relative to our elite private peers, and that is our scale. And so I think it's a wonderful way to engage with alums. It's a wonderful way to work with our students. And again, a favorite phrase of mine is, a major is not a career. A major is acquiring a set of skills that you'll take with you the rest of your lifetime. And so let's get in that mindset.
Mm-hmm. And that's so wonderful too, that you're calling forward that really community aspect of the state of Oregon, that the University of Oregon is a place where so many people find their path in life and then continue on in the state.
Absolutely.
So that even sort of loops back to what you were saying before about this year's entering class.
Yeah, and I want to be the go-to source for talent for every employer, every community organization, every government, every private firm in Oregon. Like, if you want great talent, look to our amazing graduates. Mm-hmm. Hungry, humble, hardworking, madly talented graduates who can create value for your organization.
Brilliant and very ethical, yes. Tell us some about the UO participation in the Big Ten Academic Alliance. I'm so interested in this new phase of our participation.
Great question, because so many people, and some who might be listening, are thinking, oh yeah, the Big Ten, that's an athletic conference. And yep, it's shown a light on University of Oregon sports teams. But the Big Ten is unique among the major athletic conferences for this other organization called the Big Ten Academic Alliance. And among other things, the Big Ten shares library resources. Yeah. And so together, what's called the Big Collection, the library resources of the Big Ten, is the third largest library in the world, behind the Library of Congress and the British Library. And so both of us sitting here can acquire resources from University of Indiana or Rutgers in a matter of days, or if it's electronic, instantly. And so I was talking to our colleague Jason Yonker, who's in addition to being the Associate Vice President for Intergovernmental Relations, is the chief of the Coquel tribe. And he said, oh my gosh, University of Indiana has some voice archives of Coquel elders. And he said, I have access to that. I mean, and that's just one small example. There's also wonderful affinity groups or leadership groups. Almost every position at the University of Oregon has a Big Ten Academic Alliance peers. So I'm willing to bet a reasonable amount of money that the Humanities Centers directors across the Big Ten have an affinity group that gets together quarterly or monthly. And if not, I'm sure our friend Keith Marshall would be happy to help facilitate that. But the chief financial officers, the admissions officers, everybody in my leadership team has a peer group, and you learn from that. We can avoid mistakes of others, we can learn from others. There's the sharing of language instruction. I don't have to tell you about our less commonly taken languages, lictals, or our almost never taken languages, our antals. But these, you might think, oh, that's really not important. They're less taken because people don't speak them. But often these languages can be spoken by, or written or spoken by tens of millions, or even in some cases hundreds of millions of people. And then for research and for being global citizens, it's vital that we provide opportunities for students to take languages. But any one university may not have sufficient critical mass to do four terms in a sequence of Swahili or Urdu or something. Those are probably not such great examples, but Quechua or something. And so we can band together, and particularly when we're so used to being on Zoom and the like, to share language instruction of the less commonly taught or less commonly taken languages. And so all of those things. So we also have purchasing cooperatives, and so we can get some of the things, whether travel or other arrangements, less expensively than we otherwise would without being a member of the Big Ten Academic Alliance. So there's just a huge number of benefits across the university. And also leadership training program. I mean, Chris Long is a product of our Big Ten Academic Alliance training programs.
Yeah, that's great. And I also was reflecting on this question a little bit and thinking there are probably things that the University of Oregon is contributing, because the Big Ten, of course, used to be more centered in the middle of, I guess it's still centered in the middle of the country, right? But I can imagine that we're bringing things from the Pacific Northwest that are valuable to the Big Ten.
There's no doubt. Some of the archives at the University of Oregon Library will be a treasure for others.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Well, I look forward to hearing updates about that, because that development is just really exciting. You mentioned Chris Long. He came on board just recently as the new provost in June. What strengths do you see him as bringing to the role?
Oh, he's off to such a great start. First, I feel incredibly fortunate to be able to work with Provost Chris Long. One of my favorite things about Provost Long is, of course, the Big Ten has some issues on counting, and so there are 18 institutions in the Big Ten. Chris is the only provost in those 18 universities who's a humanist. Chris is a philosopher by training, and I think it shows that the University of Oregon maybe is out ahead of others, because the skills that he has lend itself very, very nicely to academic administration. Chris has a great interest and willingness to meet with people and connect with people, and I think he's made already very strikingly deep, profound connections across campus. I love seeing that happen. I learn from him almost every day. He has a great phrase that I've embraced about moving at the speed of trust, and so trying to develop that sense of trust. And so he's contributed just in innumerable ways, not just for the academic enterprise in his role as chief academic officer, but in many, many other ways as well. And so I think we're just very fortunate to have him.
Well, we agree. He came on the show, the most recent episode before this interview with you, and it was
fantastic.
A really fun conversation.
Yeah.
He also had nice things to say about you.
Thank you.
Okay, here's the question you've been waiting for. How do you feel about the Ducks football program this year?
Leah, the Ducks play football?
They do, yes. I had to read up on this myself.
All right. So it's a fascinating issue that I get to think about. Needless to say, the Ducks, the whole athletic program is just, to use probably a bad phrase, it's just killing it this year, right? So our women's cross country won the Big Ten championship. Shailene Flanagan, the coach, was named Big Ten Cross Country Coach of the Year. You know, women's volleyball is in the NCAA tournament. They went off to Minnesota, who is, you know, very highly ranked team, and swept the Gophers in Minneapolis. The basketball team, I just learned today, is ranked number 12 and has not lost a game this year. And the Ducks football team is number 1. And so I think a lot about how does the success of the athletic program, how can that be used to elevate the entire university, particularly the academic brand of the university. And lots of things that I mull over. One, I expect to see more applications, more young people interested in, like, oh my gosh, the University of Oregon, neat things are happening there. It's not uncommon for young people to be interested in a big athletic experience, as well as having just a world-class, first-rate university. It brings eyes. So CBS did an intro to the Oregon football game when we played Illinois, that looked at had this stunning views of the countryside in Oregon, and then focused on a lake with a duck there, kind of placidly there, and underneath, paddling madly, and using that as sort of a metaphor for what's happening with the Oregon football team training. And it was just, it's free media about people saying, oh my gosh, Oregon is a remarkable place. I want to learn more. And then it ties into these themes of innovation and entrepreneurship, because Oregon football does things a little bit differently than other teams. And so how do we use that, again, to elevate the whole university? And so you can tell I'm wildly enthusiastic and appreciative of the success, grinding on how it can, not only how we can celebrate the athletes and the student athletes and the success there, but to raise the whole university. And then the last thing I'll say is, I'm incredibly proud of this, not just the entrepreneurial and the on-field success and the success of our student athletes, but Oregon is one of just a handful, maybe under 20 universities in the country where our athletic program does not rely on what we call E&G funds, the money that the state provides us, nor does it rely on student tuition. And so the athletic program is financially self-sustaining. And so we can celebrate its success in that it's not taking money from the academic side of the house. And I'm incredibly grateful to Rob Mullins and the athletic department for that.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll have to have you back for another conversation soon, but for today, thanks so much for your time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.